Hello and welcome to MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined today by Bill Arsenault,
Hey guys.
who is currently eating a pizza,
Well, not the second. I put it down.
and Hawk Ripchaw,
Hello.
who is not eating a pizza currently.
You don't know that.
But I will be eating a pizza after this recording's over, so it seems to be a pizza night.
It's pizza night, yeah. It's pizza's been kind of a recurring thing for me lately because I just moved from down the street, just a few streets over. I'm still in the same area, in a shotgun home. Right now, my parents are visiting, so one is in the living room and one is in my brother's room. And to get some privacy, I kind of put latches on the doors. Like the hook eye latches.
Because with a shotgun apartment or house, rather, don't you have to go into a room?
Yes, it starts with the living room, and then one of the bedrooms, then the next bedroom, then the kitchen, then the bathroom.
Yeah,
it's one of those kind of things. The rent is good. Yeah, it is, but the rent is very good. It's very, very affordable, and it's a nice area, and there's no problem with crime or anything like that. It's just, the privacy thing is a little bit of a bummer. But but I told everyone, hey, I'm doing a podcast in a few minutes. I'm gonna put latches on the doors. So they're like, okay.
I got a lady in the room, so I put a tie on the doorknob. But
I don't think I'll probably never come up. But
in that case, you would have to put a tie on both doorknobs.
Yeah, you would have to, wouldn't you? Yeah, some kind of signifier. Yeah, on both.
Anyway,
unless you're in the bathroom or you're in the living room, then you just need the one.
So we're gonna go ahead and just jump into the movies because we've got quite a bit to talk about since we weren't here last week.
We gotta play catch up. Yeah.
Yep. I'm gonna first lead off with Adrift, which is the latest film directed by Balthazar Komakur Samper, however he pronounces that name.
Don't try that again.
He's a new disaster artist, isn't he? Literally, like he's into the movies that are about disasters.
Well, I mean, yeah, he directed Everest, which I didn't mind it. I thought it was an entertaining enough survival thriller.
Yeah, it was pretty decent.
Really well shot. I'll definitely give it credit for that. And you really felt like you were on a mountain, even though they were really good about hiding. They were really good about hiding the fact that a lot of it was soundstage. So,
which one?
Everest.
Oh, okay. I my earbud fell out for a second. I thought you were talking about the mountain between us. I said, no, that looked fake as fuck.
Well, yeah, no, I did not see that.
You don't.
But I did see the porn parody mountain between us.
Oh, or. I'm trying to think of like a titty fucking version of that.
Just stop.
Yeah.
I had to kind of lower my volume for a second because my parents are in the other room. So I got my headphones on, so that's fine. You guys can talk all you want. But.
So yeah, so Adrift. To summarize, it's it's based on a true story about this man and woman who were hired to sail a yacht from Tahiti to San Diego. And they just happened to go through a huge-ass hurricane that resulted in disaster. They were kind of marooned. Now, I'm going to just go ahead and spoil the fuck out of this because it's history. I mean, really.
Yeah, that's fine.
So this is one of those movies that has that he was dead all along kind of twist.
That's like Life
Which was kind of obvious in the trailers.
Oh, yeah. I know some people who didn't call it, and I just question the hell out of that because, honestly, the opening shot of the fucking movie shows a lifeless body floating in the water. Not in the water, but, deep underwater. And you're like, yeah, whoever that is dead. And then when they but the thing is, then they get into the yacht and there's only the two of them. So you're like, okay, so one of them is dead. So it's probably the one who, is the dude because it was a man who was drowning underwater. It wasn't a woman. So
I guess people thought it was like an establishing shot, like, ooh, the ocean's scary because it kills people.
So this is the movie.
Danger.
So this is the kind of movie that happens when Shailene Woodley and Sam Claflin no longer have young adult romance or action movies to fall back on.
But how much does Sam Claflin fucking suck? He's like terrible in everything.
Honestly,
what was he previously in?
First of all, I'm going to actually say he wasn't bad in this movie. I didn't mind him, and
I bought him as a floating corpse.
Yes, yeah. Well, he's a very talkative one for sure. Here's the thing: he and Shailene Woodley have very good on-screen chemistry, and that carries a lot of the movie. The problem is, it's the thing that really kills this movie, and this is really all I gotta say about it, is the movie is shot out of it's presented out of sequence, and so it keeps flashing back and forward. And
it's like Ryan's Babe.
Yeah, it's so yeah, right.
That's other media.
Yeah, so this is a movie that just does not. A disaster movie, in my opinion, is a movie that generally should be told in sequence, because you have the build-up, the character build-up, you get to know these characters, the disaster strikes, and you deal with the aftermath. And yes, that's me advocating for formula and storytelling, but honestly, this attempting to tell it out of sequence completely throws you off, and it felt like an attempt for the director to have action sequences occur throughout the film, even though it was just one sequence. And the problem is, the more interesting scenes in the movie are the character dramatic scenes, and they're just undercut by suddenly, at one moment they're just talking and having, nice romantic conversation, and you're starting to get into it, and then hard cut to like the storm, and Shailene's voice is just shrill, and
yeah, that sounds terrible.
How about that for the fault in your stars, huh?
I'm not going to call this movie terrible. I'm going to call it an admirable failure, because there's enough in this movie that I think
that's a good word considering the water. Admiral Abel.
Right. So point being, the movie has enough going for it that I would say, Netflix date night kind of movie. If you're looking for a movie that'll give your girlfriend the feels, this will give the girlfriend the feels.
Fuck that! I'll see something else that gives feels.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of other options. That's why I'm not saying that this movie's great either. And speaking of movies that aren't great, I'm going to move over to another movie that I'm going to speak about very quickly, which is Ocean's 8. So, Bill, Hawk.
Yeah.
What?
You've both seen at least one of the previous Ocean's movies, right?
Yeah.
I've seen all four of them.
Okay, so you've seen Ocean's 8 then. Let me correct myself a little bit.
Technically, there were the
so take
versions, so that there's
take those Ocean's movies and subtract penises. And
ouch! Oh wow, that's
you have Gary Ross's penis.
Look, but subtract his too. Like they really went full blown for this. Like they really wanted to cross over barriers.
I'm reasonably sure.
Dick Ross.
I'm reasonably sure that he cut it off in order to make this movie. No.
Wouldn't that be funny if the entire cast and crew were like, in order to, preserve the integrity of this film, we cut our penises off.
And by the way, I am not against Gary Ross as a director. I enjoyed Pleasantville. Seabiscuit's, pretty ordinary, but decent enough drama. The first Hunger Games movie I still enjoy. Free State of Jones is a movie I defend, even though some people won't.
It's okay.
Yeah. But it
does its job, yeah.
And this movie just does its job, and it doesn't have the flair. I mean, I'm not a fan really of the Ocean's movies prior to this. I think my favorite Ocean's movie is Logan Lucky, just because it has its own unique character.
But that's ironic because that's also a Steven Soderbergh movie, and Soderbergh has kind of a flair to him. Like it's not an obvious flair. He tends to really stay in the background a lot, but he at least has the energy. It's the editing and the energy throughout the film that keeps it up.
Soderbergh has a knack for editing a film in such a way that there's a cadence to it that's dependable, and it's very easy to watch a Soderbergh movie. Even his more like dramatic, heavier movies, it's very easy to watch them because he knows how to pace a movie perfectly. And this doesn't quite do that. And in fact, the biggest flaw in this movie is the heist occurs in the second act of the movie, and the final act just the only thing that happens in the final act of this film that's interesting is James Corden comes in as an insurance fraud investigator, and he's actually kind of interesting in the movie. He gets some legit laughs. But honestly, the problem with this movie is I will say this movie has one thing up on the Ghostbusters movie. In terms of, cash-in movies that substitute women for men just to, try to take advantage of that. The advantage that this movie has is that the cast does have some chemistry with each other, and they work as a team. Even the characters who aren't really that big in it, like Awkwafina and Rihanna and such, they're just kind of they have their lines to say. It kind of gels like as a group. With a better script, this might have worked. It's just it doesn't attempt to do anything unique with the formula, and so it just feels like, you know what? Just throw some women in there.
Just throw some women in there.
Yeah,
it's kind of amazing. The trailers are so bad for this movie.
Yeah.
There's no fun whatsoever in these trailers. There's nothing that made me see that looks like an entertaining movie that I want to go see.
There were occasional moments in this movie that made me smile, and so I'm not going to say this movie's a total waste of time, but I'm also not going to recommend you see it in a theater. This is I've got to do laundry today, and it's on Netflix kind of movie.
But you're still doing laundry, so you're kind of half-heartedly paying attention.
Yeah, so do laundry, unload the dishwasher,
mop the floor.
Yeah,
do the women's errands, so to speak.
Okay, well, I'm not going.
I don't want to go that far either. But considering that this movie, the way we're talking about it, almost exploits the Me Too movement. It really capitalizes on it in a way that's very shady.
It really does have that feeling of just, and by the way, here's something that's interesting. So Danny Ocean in this movie, apparently he's dead. So I never saw Ocean's 13, and so he doesn't die, does he?
No.
Okay, so he died at some point.
He might have faked his own death.
That's the thing.
It's possible.
They hint very strongly that he might have faked it because Sandra Bullock has a couple lines like she's standing at his grave and she's like, "You better be dead." And
right.
And then at the end, she like drinks a toast at his grave, that sort of thing. And it would have been the time in a movie when you would have had like the post-credit sequence where he showed up, but they didn't do that. It's weird because the credits roll and then it pops up with her sitting next to the grave and drinking, and you're like, he's going to show up, isn't he? And he doesn't.
What would have been creepy is if his hand popped out of the grave and he became a zombie. A zombie Danny Ocean.
If he did that and like bit her face off or something, that would have made the entire movie worth it. Because it would have been a just completely ridiculous choice. As far as that, I'll just quickly summarize by saying I'm going to go through the list of the characters in this movie really quick and say who was interesting. Okay, Sandra Bullock. No, not particularly that interesting. Kate Blanchett should have been the star of this movie. Her character doesn't get much to do, but it's Kate fucking Blanchett, and she can't not be interesting. Anne Hathaway, I can't believe it. I actually kind of enjoyed her character. Anne Hathaway is basically parodying herself.
Okay, I've heard that, actually.
The character she plays is just a ditzy celebrity who just feels like the way she's portrayed is ditzy, and then there's a twist later, and it turns out she knows more than she's letting on, which is interesting. So that I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually enjoyed Anne Hathaway in this movie, and I am not an Anne Hathaway fan. Mindy Kaling in this movie, I don't even remember what the fuck she did.
She does something with jewelry.
Yeah, that's about all I know. Sarah Paulson has a couple of scenes in this movie that are intriguing because there's this when you first meet her, she's like a mom and she's got children, and she's living this very straight-faced, like upper middle class white life, and you find out that her garage is full of stolen shit, which is kind of a funny little moment.
It's like that episode of Family Guy where Lois becomes a kleptomaniac.
Sort of, but as far as stolen shit, we're talking like she has like 100 ovens, or not ovens, but like toaster ovens. So it's not like kleptomania so much as she fucking knocked over a truck or something.
Yeah, this sounds like True West.
Yeah,
remember that scene in True West where he's showing off all the toasters he stole?
I've never seen True West.
Oh well, you should read it. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So,
it's okay. A play, but
yeah. So I haven't read it, I guess. I'm sorry. I don't know what True West is. I'm sorry.
It's a Sam Shepard play, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to look.
John C. Reilly, Philip Seymour Hoffman performed it once. It was
Awkward Fina is there.
It would have been better if it was Sextina Aquafina, right?
I guess, yeah. Rihanna is your typical hacker character, not particularly that interesting.
Yeah.
Helena Bonham Carter, also an actress I've never been a huge fan of, does kind of have an interesting role. She plays a fashion designer who is sort of their in to the whole heist, and she's the in because she's deeply in debt with the IRS, and so she needs money. And so her character is kind of she's like your stereotypical fashion designer who has these crazy ideas, but things have moved past her, so she's no longer in style, in vogue. And so you can see like the weight of the of being passé is heavy on her, and so that's kind of interesting. Other than that, I mean, James Corden's really he when he shows up in the last act, he's kind of interesting, and that's about it. There's cameos from a couple of people from the Ocean's movies, Elliot Gould and the guy who plays the Asian dude who's able to get into tight corners. That's it. That's all I got to say.
All right.
Anyway, so Hawk, you saw American Animals.
The better heist movie of the week for sure.
Well, tell us about it.
American Animals is based on something that happened in 2003. 4 students of Transylvania University in Kentucky planned and executed the heist of some extremely expensive and valuable art books from the university's library. And it's all the marketing for this. You said you haven't seen a lot of marketing for it, and I actually saw a poster yesterday that the town that it played in, right about a couple minutes away from me, is one of maybe 24 cities that it's playing in currently. So it got an extremely limited release.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy I was able to catch it here. I saw the trailer for it for something else when I went to go see something else, and the marketing has been a lot of, this is not based on a true story. This actually happened, and then the opening crawl of the movie, not the crawl. There's an opening line on the movie, like that shows up on the screen. It says, "This is not based on a true story," and the words "not disappears," or "not based on" disappears. So it just says this is a true story.
Okay.
Which there's a lot of ridiculous stuff that happens in the movie that kind of gives it this really almost fantastical feel to it, but then it kind of makes it better because you know that almost all this is real. I did some light research on Vanity Fair and some other sources that wrote up on the event, and as far as I can tell, nearly everything that happened is completely factual. Now, the movie introduces a really interesting element, which I won't spoil too much of it. I'll say what it is, but they interview people involved with the event, and you really kind of have to depend on what they're saying. And the movie makes it kind of clear that you might not be getting the full truth, but what they're presenting is what has been told, and so that is, for all intents and purposes, the truth. So the movie blends documentary footage and interviews. Sorry, not documentary footage. It blends interviews and real events in a very interesting way. And the way they utilize this footage and the way it plays on the dramatized events is extremely creative. So it's definitely an engaging watch. It also kind of plays on the heist genre and uses the heist genre in some really interesting ways. Because one of the big things with the marketing too is that these kids clearly think they're in some kind of movie world. Not like a delusion, but they're acting like what they've seen in films is exactly how you should execute a heist, and that leads to some pretty funny things as well.
It sounds like that foreign film Gomorrah.
That was a porn film?
No, foreign film.
I thought you said you're really faint right now, Bill.
Yeah, it did sound like you said porn, by the way. I know what Gomorrah is, so I assumed you said foreign, but it did sound.
Yeah, it's foreign. I said foreign.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
Still a little quiet though.
All right, I'll see if I can fix that. But go ahead.
But yes, apart from we'll talk about it later, but apart from First Reformed, this is probably my favorite movie of the year so far. It is extremely entertaining in a number of really great ways. It's oftentimes very funny, eventually kind of grim and serious, but it is a very skillfully made and well written, and it's well paced. Like everything in this movie really comes together in a very satisfying way. If I can catch it a second time, I might, because I really got a kick out of it with everything that it did. But I've just kind of been buzzing about it for the past few days since I saw it. There's also a lot of good use of, there's a lot of art used in the movie. Like the art books are featured heavily, of course, and you oftentimes get shots of the art itself that are interspersed with actions in the movie. It's kind of hard to describe, but the way that everything just kind of weaves together makes for also a very visually interesting film. And of course, the main actors are great, especially Evan Peters, who is almost always great, even as Quicksilver in the X-Men movies. He's just a great actor, and he was pretty much perfect for this role.
Well, I don't know if he's great as Quicksilver, but he has a charisma as Quicksilver that comes off really well.
I think that his performance would have been great if the character was more interesting.
Yeah.
But he kind of just stands around until he gets to do a cool slow motion running sequence.
Yeah, he kind of just stands around, does a montage, and boom, you know. Yeah.
I would say that he's a good actor that is very poorly directed in the
X-Men movies. Yeah, but he's kind of able to get off with get around that. You know, he's able to use his acting talent. So
yes. So yes, see it if it comes near you, because I can assure you that it's a very, very entertaining film. This is, I hate to use these sort of labels so soon after a movie comes out, because I'm still kind of high off of what the movie, how much of an experience it was. But this stands as one of my favorite crime films I've seen in a very long time.
Cool.
Very effective film.
Well, that's good to hear. I will be looking forward to seeing it. I hope that it's going to play in my area this weekend, but you never know.
And go see it in the theater too, actually, if you can, if it does play near you, because I was surprised that seeing it with a crowd was actually quite fun, because there's a couple of big money moments for comedy that got everybody in the theater really going. And I saw it mostly with a big middle-aged crowd, So hopefully with the turnout that it had there, it'll get a little bit more of a wide release and some word of mouth boost as well. So
that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right. So next we're going to talk Upgrade.
Oh, I had a great segue. I was going to describe my experience watching Upgrade in terms of the audience, like, because he was saying his middle-aged audience was for American Animals was really enjoying it and getting in it. My audience were shocked and laughing at the gore in Upgrade to the point where it was like very joyful and surprising on my end. Like,
yeah, so
usually I go to theaters and people barely react to stuff, but here when like Logan Marshall Green is splitting open a guy's mouth, is splitting his head open through the mouth, they just went, "Oh damn, man! Whoa!" You know, and that was all.
I had the same kind of theater as you did, with the whole crowd really getting into it.
Yeah,
not a huge crowd because the movie only made $4.5 million that weekend. But
yeah, it was in one of the smaller theater rooms for me. But it wasn't packed, but it had a good amount of people in it, and everyone in the room was really into the movie.
Considering the movie was supposedly made for under $5 million, though.
Every dollar is on that screen.
Absolutely.
Yes. And really well. Damn it, does Lee Wannell know how to squeeze the most out of a budget? Because you could tell me that movie was made for $40 million, and I would believe you right away.
Not bad, not. You'd probably go, yeah, that was, yeah.
I can't help but think that the cityscape that is used, like the futuristic cityscape.
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder whether like Jason Blum like commissioned some CGI house to build a cityscape that that they could morph into various things very cheaply.
Yeah, it's probably some kind of template.
Reuse. Yeah, exactly.
It didn't look bad. It blended in well.
It looked very serviceable. I'm one of those people, by the way, who I absolutely love a good matte painting. Yeah. And this is, this is sort of the CG equivalent of a matte painting. It's just kind of a static shot, but it does what it needs to do in setting the stage for the futuristic world that it's set in.
Yeah, right. It establishes what has happened, where the world is at right now, or at least where America is at right now. Mm-hmm. And technologically speaking, it's advanced, but it's not so far advanced it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. It's advanced to the point where we in 2018 can kind of imagine this being a potential future.
Oh, certainly.
And it's not even a utopia. There are problems. There's still slums. There's still poor people. Certain issues have been forgotten or swept under the rug still.
It really juxtaposes sleekness and griminess very well.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that they portray the main character, Gray Trace.
Gray Trace, yeah.
Trace Gray.
The Gray Trace.
Yeah, it's the same fucking thing. But nobody cares what his name is because, anyway,
he's Action Man.
Yeah, I really like how subtle the world building is and the character building is in this movie, because you see, when you first see everything, like the world is very sleek and futuristic, and then all of a sudden Gray is working on a very old vintage car, and his disdain for technology is established pretty early on, but also very subtly. He's not like, I don't trust robots. I mean, in an indirect way, he kind of does say that, but he's not anti-technology. He just kind of prefers the old way of things, and the movie is very kind of gentle on how it portrays that.
He's very much a hands-on type of guy.
Yes.
He'd rather do it himself if he could, or do it with other people, labor. He even brings that up, like for every machine that automates something, 5 guys lose a job.
Mm-hmm. Of course, and there's also moments of comedy with that, like when he and his wife are riding in their automated car. He tries to touch the steering wheel, and this voice says, "Please do not touch the steering wheel while the car is in motion." And this is like little goofy things like that.
And in exchange to make them feel good, they start to have sex.
Right.
In the car, because they can't
the car. I'll suck your dick.
Wow. They're a loving couple. I almost had a problem with how much they were expressing their love. because movies tend to do this sometimes to overcompensate for, like, okay, we got to rush through this because our runtime isn't that long, so let's really harp on and establish the relationship.
Yeah, it was kind of like, I almost had like a mail order wife feel to it.
Yeah, but they did it okay enough. It wasn't terrible. It was just
it wasn't as bad as the '90s Lost in Space movie.
Oh right, yeah.
I love you, wife.
That's very Amish of you. Thank you. That's very Mike Pence of you.
No, he would have called her mother.
Oh yeah. Oh god. So this would be more Mitt Romney, I guess. I love you, wife.
If it was Amish, they would have said, "You are very plain, wife."
It's like the neutral people from Futurama.
That's probably the inspiration.
Yes. So, okay, Upgrade. I went into this movie having months of anticipation because it was originally playing at the Overlook Film Festival here in New Orleans, which is a horror film festival that's been making the rounds of the country. It's a very new one. And I ended up seeing Hereditary instead, but I really wanted to see Upgrade. It looked really cool. And then the trailers finally came up, and the one line that stuck with me was when Logan Marshall Green's like, "I'm a fucking ninja," and then his AI system's like, "No, you're not."
He's like, "I'm very advanced, but I'm not a ninja."
Yeah, right. The Logan, I want to highlight his performance. I think it was brilliant. Absolutely, like it's from a physical standpoint. Like it wasn't just the choreography that he had to learn for the action sequences, it was his reaction to the action sequences. Like he was not in control of his body a lot of the time. And while his AI program, the chip that was implanted in his body on his spine, while it was controlling him and in his movements and everything, he was looking surprised and shocked and scared.
Yeah, he really sells the idea that his hands are being puppeteered and his face and head move independently from what the rest of his body is doing.
The physical performance was impressive for sure.
Yeah, when he's walking, he walks like not a human.
And did you notice that before the operation, he had a very pronounced slouch, and after the operation, when he had STEM, he stood up completely straight.
Yeah, it's like he was forcing himself to stand up straight, like a puffed out chest and arched back a little bit. It was almost comical. Like this is what the robot thinks how humans walk.
Yeah.
This is how that program thinks, and it's forcing him to walk like that, to walk like a nerd, basically. And that's totally not what Logan Marshall Green's character in this movie is. He's very much like we said, he's a mechanic guy. He's a very do-it-yourself kind of guy. He's a very cool guy, He's a cool guy,
I really like the villain performance as well.
Which villain? That's the thing. There's a lot of twists in this movie.
The main villain.
Oh, Fisk?
Yes, Fisk.
The weird child molesty looking guy, but at the same time he's like a badass.
Yeah, somebody I can't remember who it was. They said he looks. I think it might have been Jeremy Johns on YouTube. He said that he looks like the grown up version of Kit from Napoleon Dynamite.
He kind of does, yeah.
But he had despite his kind of stupid look, he had a pretty good physical presence, and he was.
And he's very intimidating.
Yes, very intimidating for having a comb over and a little mustache,
little pencil thin mustache, almost like John Waters or something. It was
John Waters mustache.
He was very calm, and it was uneasy to be around that performance.
Yeah, because he made a very great antagonist.
He felt like his character was a he calls himself one of the upgraded. He's got biomechanical things all around his body. Like he's got a gun implanted in his arm. That was out of everything in the trailer, the gun hand was like my second favorite thing. Like the first thing was like the fighting and the STEM thing is cool, but the real reason I'm going to see this is people shoot bullets out of their palms that they load into their elbow like they're shooting up. Right, and that's a good way of putting it. Like they're shooting up. They literally are, and they figuratively are. There's a lot of moving parts to this movie. It's not just a revenge story. It has a lot of subtle things to say just by virtue of the world that the characters are living in, just by virtue of the future.
The specter of our dependence on technology is scary, but the movie doesn't paint it as entirely oppressive and sinister. It just kind of does so organically through what you see in the events of the film.
Yeah, there's that sequence where he goes to visit the hacker, and he sees the people in VR, and he's like, "Why are they here?" And he's like, "Well," she's like, "Well, the real world's pretty lame and horrible, and painful. They go there to escape." And he's like, "How long are they here?" She's like, "Days."
Do they eat or sleep? Not really.
Like, no. And so she hacks his system and everything, and she goes off to leave. And he's like, "Where are you going?" And she's like, "This is too important for, they can't get a hold of this stuff, or they can't stop us.
We can't let them win.
We can't let them win." And he's like, "What the hell are you talking about? Come back and help me." And it's like he's a fish out of water caught in the middle of something that's bigger than him. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't make it an issue to solve the huge problem that's looming over everything. It's kind of like RoboCop. RoboCop isn't after stopping OCP from turning it into the city of the future. He's just looking to stop the main criminals that are associated with his case.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was the problem with the RoboCop remake.
Which was the problem with the RoboCop remake, yeah. And it's like they tied all that in together and tried to clean it up all nicely. Mm-hmm. But in this movie, he's literally just a cog in a machine, really. And a superior cog. The cog keeps gaining autonomous intelligence over the course of the film to the point where it's literally controlling him. And that becomes scary. That becomes a real struggle right there when he's got a gun and he's like trying to not point it at a person.
Yeah.
Those moments were pretty good.
Speaking of which, I think it's probably safe now to talk spoilers for Upgrade, right?
Yeah, it's been like over a week. Sure. It's been like a week and a half, something like that.
So when it came to the inventor of STEM, who saw that guy and right away was like, that dude's bad news?
Yeah, at first that was who I pegged as I was like, okay, it's going to be him. But then the reveal came, it wasn't really him. It was the AI program itself. It was STEM. And it was forcing him to do all this stuff. Like he was doing it or coercing him or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And it was literally frightening to him. And what was funny was Logan Marshall Green's reaction was like, it was STEM all along. Like he was freaked out by it. He was genuinely like, "What the fuck is this?" Again, the fish out of water thing. He's caught up in something bigger than himself, and he doesn't know what the hell to do. He's not the one to solve this problem. There's nothing he can do. So that right there is kind of a scary notion.
Yeah, Ken, you had mentioned that reveal wasn't at all surprising. I kind of agree. It wasn't very surprising, but I would argue that I don't know if it was really supposed to be.
Yeah, it was probably supposed to be.
I think they
play it like a surprise, but they also telegraphed it.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Because at the point where it's at the end of the beginning of the third act, it's revealed that STEM does have sinister motives. So I think it would follow logically that he is the mastermind of everything. But I thought it was a pretty good reveal to show that STEM was orchestrating everything, like down to the minute details, even to the point where he chose Gray because of his lack of implants and augments.
Yeah, that was interesting. I thought maybe it was just like if it was the inventor, that it was just because he happened to know this guy.
Yeah.
And this guy came by his shop one day and he was like, "Oh, okay, I'll pick you." Because he's kind of a squirrely kind of guy. But then it turns out, oh no, it's the AI program he created.
Right.
And that was pretty interesting. That's where the movie almost lost me. I'll admit, I kind of want to admit, it is the ending. It's a Brazil kind of ending.
It's a Lee Wannell kind of ending.
Yeah, right. It's a very downer ending. Basically, the movie ends with Gray attempting to kill himself or shoot Stem or do whatever. He attempts to do something to stop the murderous ways. Because Stem is a fucking killer. And he wakes up in a hospital, and it's his wife is there, and he's like, "Oh, was this all a dream?" And then we cut back to where we were previously at, and Stem has fully taken over his mind, and he's like, "Yeah, Gray is broken now. He's just fallen back into his dreams."
Mm-hmm. He's in his mind because it's a happier place than.
Yeah, it goes back to the VR thing. And,
So Lee Wannell was told by his producers that this movie will probably not get a sequel because they told him straight up, like, this is an R-rated action movie and an original concept. These don't make money. Mm-hmm. However, Will Ashton and I did come up with a sequel idea if it does get made.
Oh,
we think that a sequel could be something similar to Insidious 2, or something of that nature, where a lot of the movie is Stem in the outside world, in the real world, evolving and killing, and Gray inside his own mind, realizing that something is very wrong and he's trapped in his dreams, and he starts to mess with things inside his mind to kick his consciousness into putting him back in control.
Okay. I like the idea that possibly Stem becomes like a virus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's almost like that what was that Jason movie, that Friday the 13th? No, it was Jason Goes to Hell. It was a bad movie, but the idea was that Jason becomes a fucking virus was kind of cool.
One thing that kind of intrigued me about the movie that's a little different from what I would expect. Normally when you see these movies about artificial intelligences, all they want is to spread and become like bigger and, cover the globe, that sort of thing. And in this case, he just wanted to become a person. I thought that was interesting.
But that might be the next logical step, is to become two people.
But does he want that? He intentionally destroyed these other people who were enhanced beings, and I'm wondering if he's so much of a megalomaniac that he just wants to be the only him that there is.
That's possible.
So Gray starts going through and wiping out any other augmented people, and then maybe that would inadvertently escalate the conflict between the upgraded and the regulars.
Yeah, like maybe creating a sort of showdown on Earth between the upgraded and the not upgraded.
This might be where the story becomes true schmaltz and true B-movie crap. Is when those two factions come together and suddenly, whatever subtlety we had in the original movie is gone out the window.
Sometimes the schlocky sequel is actually entertaining. Predator 2 is honestly one of my favorite sequels, because it is just such a unique twist on the formula that the first movie had.
Just Predator in the city.
It's Predator in the city, but it takes some chances that you wouldn't expect. It doesn't rely on because Danny Glover, he's not like a muscle man or anything.
No, he's just a cop in the movie.
And that's exactly. It's more like a police drama that happens to merge with an alien, versus the first movie was. That's where I think they fell apart with the Predator movies. Is that Predator 1 is a war movie that an alien jumps into the middle of.
Yeah.
And Predator 2 is a cop movie that the Predator jumps into the middle of. I think they should have carried that on with other Predator movies in just like coming up with a genre.
A romantic comedy when a Predator jumps in.
They could have done that, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, that's my 2 cents on Upgrade. I think that if they make a schlocky sequel and really have fun with it, that might actually be an awesome choice.
That might be the route to go, but I think I'd be slightly disappointed if they did that, considering that this movie was actually kind of smart in places. But that's not to say you can't be smart with schlock,
Sure.
So it's possible. You just kind of strike a balance.
Even if a sequel is not made, all I will say is keep giving Lee Wannell money to come up with original concepts, because he is fucking good at it, and he is
Yes.
His technical skill with the camera and the camera stabilization techniques and the production design and color, it looked like a graphic novel to the point where, again, I'm name dropping Jeremy Jahns again. He's like, I didn't do any research on this movie before I walked in. For all I know, it could be based on a graphic novel the way it looked. And I totally agree with that. I know it's not, but it certainly has that graphic novel look to it. And this guy is remarkably creative, and I want Lee Wannell to keep making movies.
Did you guys catch the James Wan reference? That was pretty obvious. It was in the apartment building where he goes to see the hacker, and he's trying to hit the call buttons, and there's a J Wan.
Yeah.
Huh.
I was
That's
like, oh, James Wan. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't notice that.
So, speaking of movies that look like graphic novels.
Nerd. Oh, go ahead.
I said, speaking of movies that look like graphic novels.
Yes.
Hotel Artemis?
Segueing to a Hotel Artemis.
Oh.
So,
Which is
Hotel
not
Artemis.
as good as Upgrade.
No, it's not. Hotel Artemis is a movie that I'm just gonna jump into this. It's a movie that was kind of promoted in like being a knockoff John Wick. Like we are the this is Continental the movie sort of.
Oh.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, it's got the. Here's the problem.
That's how it was promoted.
Here's the problem with Hotel Artemis is that it advertises a very fun idea with fun characters and interesting world, and it gives you exactly what the trailer gave you and nothing more.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way
the
to
movie
put it.
only goes as deep as the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, there's nothing else in the movie. Like you and I talked about it, Ken. Great characters. Jodie Foster is great. Dave Bautista is great.
Oh yeah.
Jeff Goldblum's only in the movie for about 10 minutes, but he's a lot of fun.
Yeah, when he's in it, it's really entertaining.
Yeah, Sophia Boutella is a lot of fun, but like everything in this movie, the characters, the setting, deserves a better story.
Yes,
the story just fucking sucks. Nothing happens. There's so much. The movie opens with this riot because a corporation decided to turn off water because water is privatized now, and that's all that really is a reason for there to be a riot in the movie and a reason for the Hotel Artemis to have power problems, which is a reason for there to be some escalating tension inside the fortress-like hotel. Like nothing really matters except to drive the next thing that matters for the next thing, if that makes sense.
So the issue of corporate of privatization and poverty, that never really plays a part in the movie.
It literally doesn't.
Oh, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
There was a shot or a sequence in the trailer that kind of ticked me off a little bit, and it wasn't in a bad way, but it still kind of was noticeable. Like it just annoyed me. It was Jodie Foster running down a hallway, and she was like, "Just another night at Hotel Artemis," she says to the camera, and I thought, "Oh,
she's talking to a character in that scene."
Oh, she's talking to a character. Okay, because it felt like it was to the camera.
Yeah, it's the trailer. The trailer kind of.
It was a little too full of itself, is what I kind of thought. Yeah,
I'll agree with that.
Look how clever we are. It's another night at Hotel Artemis. I was like, oh, fuck you.
So this movie is a movie with wonderful characters, but a shit script.
Yeah.
It just does not have a story to tell. And when I say a shit script, the dialogue isn't even that bad. It's just everything that's staged just doesn't quite come together. I mean, the story is a mess.
The dialogue has way too many F-bombs.
Yeah, shit.
No, but like, hear me out, okay? Like Charlie Day's character, he literally has an F-bomb for every sentence, and it doesn't feel organic to his character. Like, say, The Big Lebowski, which has like 300 something, or is it maybe 300 or 700 F-bombs. Hundreds of F-bombs in The Big Lebowski, but they all work for the characters because that's the style of that dialogue. In Hotel Artemis, it feels like everybody's cussing because that's what cool R-rated movies do.
I did not mind Charlie Day's character being just completely douchey and cursing like crazy, because to me his character was that kind of, he was the full of himself douche, and that's what his character was, and he played that exactly the way you would want to play a full of himself douche.
It feels like the movie's a full of itself douche.
Not quite.
It feels like Lucky Number 11.
I've never seen that movie, but I've always hated. I've always hated the movie just because the name is stupid.
It's a stupid name, but it's also like a right out of film school kind of movie. You know, like this is the first movie you make, and it's not good out the gate. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you think it's good, yeah.
I did like Dave Bautista a lot.
He plays the compassionate nurse, right?
No, he's not compassionate. He kind of fucking hates everybody.
Oh yeah,
that's what
he's like.
He's supposed to be compassionate. That's what I mean.
You might think, as a nurse should be, and he's compassionate towards Jodie Foster's character, but he's always like really angry about everything. And my favorite line from him is like
because how they kind of insinuate that Bautista was sort of a wayward soul that was that she took in and took care of him, and now he's kind of her
protector.
Well, protector / medical professional, nurse's assistant.
Right, and that's my favorite line from him. Is like, you see this badge? That means I'm a medical professional, and that
goes both ways. That goes both ways.
And there's one guy, he does this funny stuff. Like at one point, a guy attacks him and he slams on the ground. He's like, and also don't sneak up on me when I walk away again, or else I'll really fuck you up this time. And his name is Everest. It's because he's so big. And when the bad guys are attacking, he's like, visiting hours or never.
That's like a line out of fucking Man with the Iron Fists. Like,
I think what works in it is Bautista really sells the corny dialogue that his character is given. He commits to it, and honestly, it's not too different from the character he plays in the Guardians of the Galaxy, in that the dialogue that he's given in both of those is kind of ludicrous. And
Bautista has shown himself to be an incredibly effective actor for being a wrestler.
Oh yeah,
right. He's very surprising because no one would have pegged him out of, like, if you've seen him in wrestling, he was okay, but no one would have pegged him exactly to be the good actor out of that bunch.
You almost have a sense of humor, by the way.
That too, like, you get the sense that he is a performer and an actor that kind of fell into wrestling.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, I think he got into bodybuilding first, and then he got into wrestling, and then he got into acting. But really, he probably should have gone acting.
Yeah,
to begin with. Yeah.
Excited to see him in more stuff because he's great. Now, we said that Dave Bautista sells his dialogue really well, and we don't need to talk about this movie that much longer. But the one thing that really bugged me is that it's not as silly as the trailer makes it seem. It's actually, Jodie Foster's character arc is actually super grim, and it really sucked me out of the movie, where I'm like, oh, okay, we get to the sad part where Jodie Foster's going to be, really depressed for a scene, and then she goes back to scurrying around helping people.
Yeah, grim though it might be, I actually kind of dug that they hint very strongly at Dave Bautista being the new head of the Hotel Artemis.
I mean, they didn't really even hint so much as outright say it.
Oh.
Yeah.
They set it up a sequel for sure. There was some article. It's like, the Hotel Artemis is a sequel in some really ingenious ways. Like, no, it doesn't. There's a mid-credit sequence that clearly shows one character alive, and an end-credit sequence that clearly shows the other character alive. Like, it's not clever. It's just what fucking happens.
It's a very flawed movie that has a lot to appreciate about it. That's pretty much how I'll summarize it.
I wouldn't go that far. I would. Now, it's interesting because you and I went in with opposite expectations and had almost opposite reactions. I saw the trailer, like, that looks like fun. I might enjoy this. It's going to be dumb, but it'll be fun. I went in, I was like, this is stupid and boring. I went in
thinking it was going to be stupid and boring,
and I was kind of had some fun.
Surprised.
Yeah, which is weird. But Jodie Foster's performance is really, really good, but it deserved a much better movie.
I'll agree with that. Yeah,
And I think the movie kind of tried to play into these themes of addiction and breaking out of addiction and lifestyle choices, but it completely fucked up it screwed up everything on trying to execute that.
You don't have to censor yourself on this show. It's fine.
Yeah, I know, but it's because there's events related to this character's death, and one of the main characters was a heroin addict, and and the movie I think really does seem to be playing into this. A lot of times they talk about the criminal lifestyles, like getting in is always easier than getting out, and I think that's a clear allegory for addiction. But the movie never really explores those themes except pointing them out in the script, like, hey, remember this theme that we're trying to go for?
How is Jenny Slate in the movie?
Her 5 minutes were fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was kind of weird that they casted her in this.
Yeah.
Same with Venom. You saw that trailer for Venom where she's like, symbiotes.
Symbiote.
Symbiotes.
Even, I think, Marvel Comics, they had they released one of their newest issues. I don't remember the exact context because I don't really buy comics and read them. I just saw this online. They make a very subtle dig at that, and they very clearly point out that that's an incorrect way to pronounce that.
Well, that's Jenny Slate. That's just how she talks, and she's got a very cutesy kind of voice, like very feminine, very cutesy. She talks like this.
Yeah,
she talks very, very high pitched but low, squeaky.
Yeah,
symbiotes.
Yeah, she was fine in this movie. Her character kind of sucked, but she was.
She just doesn't have much to say or do in it. That's really
okay.
Hasn't really got any reason for existing. Even the implications of what her character is doing in the movie amounts to literally nothing.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Messy movie, which is disappointing. I was hoping Drew Pearce would do a little bit more with his debut, but it was not meant to be. It also bombed in the theaters. It's got a $30 million budget, made like made less money than Upgrade.
That's damn.
It's not good. It's like at number 8, I think.
Yeah, they set it up for a sequel, and that sequel's never happened.
What's that movie that the trailer just dropped from the guy who did The Cabin in the Woods?
Oh, The Bad Times at the El Royale.
Yeah, doesn't that look good?
That looks so good.
It looks like a movie that. Here's the thing. To me, it looks like a movie that looks like a good movie, but could also be completely horrible.
But I trust Drew Goddard to.
Yes, that's where I thought Drew Pearce, Drew Goddard. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that movie is going to be really interesting. I think he knows how to put together something really clever, which, I mean, Cabin in the Woods is totally indicative of that.
Yeah.
But it's also the thing that consistently surprises me about the trailer for the El Royale is that Dakota Johnson is really breaking out of that 50 Shades thing that, everybody's like, oh, she sucks because she's in 50 Shades. But no, she's actually, that performance looks really good in that movie.
It's like Kristen Stewart. She was kind of a joke in the Twilight movies, but it turns out it was just because those movies were bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
she also hasn't really put out a good performance since then.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, Kristen Stewart?
Yeah.
Since Twilight? She hasn't put out a good performance. What about Personal Shopper?
I didn't see Personal Shopper.
You should.
I saw American Ultra, though.
Yeah, I know. She wasn't.
I liked American Ultra, but she was not the reason for that.
Right. What about that Jack Kerouac movie where she's was it On the Road?
I didn't see that one.
Yeah. Okay. She's been in quite a few other movies where she's done a really good job.
All right. Well, then I will retract my statement.
Clouds of Sils Maria.
Nope.
Another movie I haven't seen.
No, me neither.
Okay. What about? Oh God, there's a couple others I can think of, but we got to move on to Hereditary.
Snow White and the Huntsman.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm sure she's okay in that. I just didn't care to see it.
Oh my God, she's apparently rumored to being in a Charlie's Angels reboot.
No, don't do it.
Let's not make that and say we did.
Stick to the artsy stuff. Don't move on to the other crap.
Charlie's Angels reboot. I mean, who?
Another one? I mean, come on. Who
if
cares?
There's no Mick G at the helm, I don't want no part of it.
Yeah,
who do you think he's going to direct the Charlie's Angels remake?
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
Unless Tom Green is back, in which case,
In which case, yes.
Sold.
You know who's probably going to direct the Charlie's Angels reboot is the guy that made R.I.P.D. and the other Elite Divergent movies.
I'm looking it up right now. I wonder if there's a director. Oh my god.
Who is it?
You're shitting me.
What?
Elizabeth Banks is rumored to be the director?
You know what? That makes more sense. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's actually kind of...
You know, Pitch Perfect 2 is kind of bad.
Yeah.
No, she made 2. Yeah.
Director of Pitch Perfect 2 and one of the segments in movie 43.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't be perfect in your debut. So I mean,
Charlie's Angels is probably going to be
associated with movie 43. I don't care how good a movie that you've made.
What about James Gunn? James Gunn.
Even then, I want to meet James Gunn and I want to ask him why.
Because he's a crazy person and he likes to do crazy things.
Someone's probably like, "Hey, James Gunn, dude, I bet you want to direct a segment of movie 43." And he's like, "Fuck you, I will."
Right.
He did it because he
wanted. If it was a bet, then that would be okay. I would be okay with that.
Have you guys seen Lolly Love, the movie that Jenna Fisher did when she was married to James Gunn?
No.
You should watch Lolly Love. It's actually pretty funny. Lolly Love. Jenna Fisher plays a well-to-do woman who wants to start a nonprofit where she gives lollipops to homeless people.
Oh my god! Yes, I've heard of this. I've not seen it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, James Gunn plays her like deadbeat husband or something. He just eats pizza all day and plays games and shit. Yeah, he doesn't care.
All right.
Yeah, that concept just sounds amazing. I remember hearing Gunn mention that in an.
It's pretty good, actually. It's pretty good.
Okay, so
so are we on to our final film?
Second to last.
Yeah, First Reformed.
Oh, so the movie Reformed. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, First Reformed, right.
First Reformed, then Hereditary.
Yes, first Reformed. Okay. I feel bad. I didn't get a chance. I was invited to a press screening for this, and I had to drop out of it due to just a scheduling problem. But I have to talk to my secretary about that.
It's well, I don't really have any other way to say this, but you missed out.
Yes, I heard I did, and I feel really bad.
Extremely good movie.
Yes. Well, I heard Paul Schrader on NPR talking about it, and he was talking about his experiences with suicide and guns and things like that. And he was very poetic about it all. I was expecting an angry little man, but I've never heard him talk. And he kind of has a Nick Nolte kind of voice, but he was spouting out really heavy things. he's been through some stuff, yes.
Yeah, Paul Schrader is he's one of those writers and filmmakers who not everything he's done has hit, but when he hits fucking hard.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it be the Yakuza, Taxi Driver,
Autofocus,
American Gigolo, Raging Bull.
Did he do Autofocus? Was that him?
I think he wrote it. Did he direct it? Actually, he didn't write it. He directed it. He didn't write it. That's interesting.
Okay, that's interesting. That was a good movie, though.
Yeah.
What else has he done? He did The Canyons, but that was kind of a bad script.
I got an invitation
The Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh yeah, he did write that. I got an invitation to audition for The Canyons, and then I didn't.
Oh.
Ended up being I almost did. I came very close because the auditions were being held very close to me.
I felt the Canyons was kind of a deplorable movie, but it's been a while
because Bret Easton Ellis wrote it.
Yeah, me too. I was interested in watching it because of that, and because it had Lindsay Lohan. I thought that was very provocative to cast her at the time, and apparently it was about the downfall of Hollywood, while also this seedy, sexy, noirish story. And then the movie was just kind of a train wreck.
Yeah. Well,
I might watch it. Well, no, it wasn't her fault, but I mean, she didn't do a good job in it either. But it wasn't her fault.
Because that was shortly after Lindsay Lohan was in I Know Who Killed Me, right?
That was a couple years after that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I Know Who Killed Me was one of the biggest pieces of shit I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
It was
I remember
so
that.
goddamn bad. I couldn't even understand it.
So
How something so bad could be made.
So how does First Reform wash out the idea of the canyons?
It makes you forget that these two movies came from the same person.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, Paul Schrader did in between the canyons in this movie. He did Dog Eat Dog, and he did Dying of the Light, which he kind of disowned.
Yeah, because
the studio took the cut
trailer or the studio kind of stole that movie from him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but Dog Eat Dog, apparently, it was him, Willem Dafoe, and Nicolas Cage, and he had control over it. So maybe that's good. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
First Reformed, like Ken had said over the chat, is essentially a spiritual successor to Taxi Driver in many ways. It's got the noir feel. It's got the main character who is very unhappy. It's got the narration, but even more than that, the themes and the filming style, it is very grim, but so effective and so engrossing.
Yes. And really the cinematography is just subtle and fascinating and creative. Yes. I freaking loved just honestly, this is a movie that sold me from the first shot and until the finish. And I can't say enough how just entirely impressed I was with first of all, Ethan Hawke's performance. This might be his career best, I think.
I would say unequivocally it is his best.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
And I love Ethan Hawke. I think he's done a lot of really good roles, but this is just masterful.
Yes.
So for those unfamiliar with the plot, basically the character he plays is the Reverend Toller. He was once a military chaplain, and he kind of had a falling out of a crisis of conscience because he encouraged his son to join the military, and his son joined the military and then proceeded to be killed in combat. And as a result of that, he kind of is sequestering himself in this very solitary monk-like existence, working as the pastor of this church that nobody really goes to other than for its museum qualities.
Yeah, so the church is First Reformed, and that's what it's called. It's the name of the church. Mm-hmm. And it was used as an element of the Underground Railroad back in the days of slavery.
Oh, and, wow.
He does hold the Sunday sermons, but you could probably count the number of people that attend on both hands. And it really is more of a tourist trap than it is an actual place of worship. Because
to the point where there's even a gift shop.
It's got a gift shop, yeah.
Because right down the street, some churches have that too. Yeah.
They do, yeah, but the gift shop is there because this is
a tourist
attraction. Right down the street, there's a mega church, which gets most of the...
Oh, one of those kind of things.
It's important to note, and this blew me away, is Cedric the Entertainer plays the priest of the mega church, and he is fantastic.
Did you even notice that it was Cedric the Entertainer, by the way?
I did. I spotted him right away. I was like, wait a second, that's Cedric the Entertainer. And he has a couple of funny lines where he jokes, but it's part of his character is kind of
Maybe it's because it's a completely different thing than I'm used to, but I didn't even realize it was Cedric until the credits rolled.
And he's not credited as Cedric the Entertainer. He's credited as Cedric, whatever his last name is, which is not the Entertainer.
Right.
His legal last name is not the Entertainer, but...
okay.
But he's not credited as his stage name, and his performance is extremely good.
Yes. Yeah, so basically what happens is Toller, he's become disenchanted with a lot of things in his life, and he's rethinking a lot, and suddenly he's he's sort of invigorated again for a brief moment when he's told by this parishioner, one of the few parishioners he actually has, comes to him and says, "Can you speak to my husband, because he's really going through a rough time right now." She's concerned for him, and the main thing is he wants, she's pregnant and he wants her to have an abortion because the husband doesn't believe that the husband believes this world is so fucked up and we've destroyed Earth that we should not bring humans into this world anymore.
We should just stop it.
Yeah, specifically climate change. He thinks that a child.
That's pretty funny. That's a pretty interesting. Climate change. That's why.
So
he's like, it's one of the best scenes in the movie when they actually have this conversation. The climate change guy and Tuller, because he talks about how, the scientists said that if we didn't make profound changes by 2015, we'd be facing all these massive things with rising tides and stuff. And, he thinks that bringing a child into a world that it is falling apart the way that it is essentially a death sentence. It's not kind.
Yeah, and that it's, he believes that we've reached a point where saving the Earth is no longer an option. That's become irrevocable.
Yeah,
and really, and Ethan Hawke stands up to him in this debate. That's pretty. He holds to his teachings pretty strongly until an incident happens, and I'm not going to spoil this aspect of it. An incident happens that shakes him to his core.
It essentially sends an already disillusioned alcoholic priest into a free fall.
Right. Ooh. And we're talking like well, I mentioned Taxi Driver. It's very much in that vein where he regresses more and more into his own conscience. And really, at one point, you're not even sure whether what you're seeing is actually happening. There's some surreal things that occur that are, very simple. That it's not overblown, but you wonder how much of it is in his head.
I think when the first really surreal thing happens, everything up until that point has been so grounded that it's almost like it gave me a start to see what was going on, and then it gets really kind of crazy in that one scene. Not frightening or too bizarre. It's just there's such a sudden change in what's going on, and all of a sudden it's not unequivocally real anymore. It's very startling.
Yes. Now, Bill, I want you to see this movie the next chance you get, so I'm not going to go into more details of the plot, other than to say that this is so far, I think, my favorite movie of the year, and
I agree.
It's a controversial film. There are some people who've seen it. Fellow movie boozer Zach Jeremiah, for instance, who weren't as warm about the movie.
Okay.
I disagree with him, and I held a bit of a debate with him online, and he ended up. We kind of agreed to disagree, but I
kind of have to. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead, since he's not here to defend himself, and say I won the debate.
I mean, he's wrong, so.
Yeah, right. Of course.
The other thing too that I really appreciated about this movie, I was raised Catholic, so I think I'm kind of hardwired to kind of be like, just a little bit when movies start to trash religion a little bit, and the older I get, the more I understand that. Again, I don't really care if people have differing views. That's fine.
And this movie was not trashing religion, really.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, like, again, let me. Even though like unconsciously I'm like, I don't really. It's weird. I feel weird that they're saying that kind of stuff. But again, the thing that I really appreciate about this movie is that it does not trash religion. Tuller is still very steadfast in his faith. He still prays a lot. He still teaches the teachings of the religion, but it just shows that very, very realistically that even the most devout people have these very profound crises of faith that they may or may not be able to climb out of.
If there's anything if there's any religious element that this movie is against, it's against the megachurch system, the organization corporatizing religion.
Which is presented somewhat comically in the movie.
Yes.
I can imagine with Cedric.
Well, he's not even really a part of it. It's just kind of like the way that that it's done. I mean, there's everything is just super nice and expensive and glossy.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give it. There's the town I work in. Is this town called Elgin, Illinois, and in Elgin there must be more mega churches in that city than in any other city in the western suburbs of Chicago, because you go down this road and you just pass mega church after mega church, and there's this one in particular that is the size of a goddamn shopping mall, because it has like a food court, it has like this huge like kids thing where that you dump your kids off. It's like a daycare thing. In around Christmas time, they have a giant electric nativity scene that is just garish as hell.
It's clear. Oh, go ahead.
It's clear millions and millions of dollars go through this church every probably day. It's just they spend so much on it, and all I can think about is, how many hungry people could you have fed with one?
Right, Jesus would hate this shit.
Yeah.
It's
interesting that the most devout believers in this movie are at First Reformed and not at the megachurch.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that Cedric the Entertainer's character is very compassionate and preaches a lot, but he does have a couple of really profound lines about how belief works and what's wrong about what Tuller's thoughts are, as he's going through his crisis. But everybody else doesn't ever really feel as genuine as Tuller or the girl whose name I can't remember.
And Cedric's character is interesting in that he clearly is still very religious and believes in God and everything, except for one major problem in that he's made a very serious set of compromises in the name of funding.
Yeah.
And it really can't help but feel soulless.
Yeah. And that was handled very effectively.
Right. It doesn't condemn him. And honestly, the way they depict him as a character, they indicate, he's probably a really nice guy. The problem is, you can serve man or you can serve God. You can't really serve both. And he's really
trying.
He's trying to do both. And that's the issue. And so, this movie deals with a lot of that. And I'm not a Christian. I'm very much agnostic with my beliefs, but I have no problem with those who are spiritual. What I have a problem with is the bureaucratic structures that people build around these that turn them into just machines to print money.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's there's
great
my
fucking
review.
Movie.
Absolutely.
Such a good movie. Oh my god.
I don't know if it's coming out this weekend in my area or not. I think it was supposed to last weekend, but it didn't. So I'm gonna have to check to see when the release dates are. But the second it hits, I'm going to see it.
Yeah, I think you're really going to love it. There is so much that it does. Really quick, I know we got to move on, but Ken, what are your thoughts on the aspect ratio?
Oh, the fact that it uses the aspect ratio that
it's full screen, but on a wide screen. So it's got the black bars on the left and right hand side.
It's 16:9, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not familiar with the actual numbers of aspect ratio off the top of my head, but it's obvious right away that this is different.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 16:9 is the widescreen. It's like 4:3, I think it's called.
Okay.
I'm terrible with aspect ratios too, and I know it's standard definition. That's what I'll call it. It's like watching your old television, or if you're watching a movie prior to, say, the early 60s.
So and 137.1.
And as to my opinion of it, I thought it was unique because it really.
What do you think it means?
You can't put God in a box.
Wow.
I don't know.
Honestly, there's sort of something you could argue to that, but
I think maybe all I can think of is that it really there's not really a whole lot of background or other stuff in the frame to look at besides what you're seeing of the characters. So I think that might have been a technique to really draw the eye directly to the characters that are talking and not anywhere else on the screen.
The cinematography is really good in spite of, it's not like a sweeping vista sort of movie. And yet it has these wonderful open scenes, like when they're outdoors, that are just so perfectly framed. You know what? I don't know if I can say right off the top of my head what it means, but I enjoyed the choice.
I also thought it was curious how the opening shot of the movie is a very slow fade in, and the movie ends with a hard cut.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the more controversial elements of the movie. Personally, I like it, but I know some.
Oh yeah, I loved it too. Although I had about 5 walkouts in my theater, and at the end of the movie, I learned that the guy behind me was playing chess on his phone.
Oh,
asshole!
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't notice, so that's his problem.
Although there was a guy next to me who, this couple was in like their 60s. Every fucking scene, this guy was whispering to his wife what he thought was going to happen. Like, you guys have been married for like 40 years. Like, she doesn't think you're cool by predicting the movie, so shut your fucking mouth. It was really starting to get annoying because he was talking over dialogue in the movie. I could still hear the dialogue, but it was very distracting that this guy next to me was like, "Oh, he's gonna do that," and I was like,
"See, I have no qualms about telling people shh during a movie."
Yeah, I was close. I think it was what was I seeing? It was well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but Hereditary. So, 2 guys up front, their phones went off at exactly the same time, and one guy's kept going. He was on it and was trying to turn it off, and the lady next to me was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" And then he was able to get his phone turned off. But
of course,
people in movies are just so inconsiderate.
Yeah, right.
Good God.
Yeah, it really angers me. And with Hereditary, let's go ahead and just segue into that.
Yeah.
My experience in Hereditary, there was someone who just kept checking their phone throughout the movie, and the problem was they were just far enough away in the theater that it would have been inconvenient for me to get up and tell them to put their fucking phone away. So what I did was when they pulled it out, I would just like hold my hand over where the light would shine so that I could ignore it, hoping that someone would tell her to put her goddamn fucking phone away.
I would just throw something.
I didn't have anything to throw.
If I owned a movie theater, I would seriously pay my employees to, before every single showing of a movie, one of them would have to come into the theater and say, if we see or hear that someone is using their phone during this movie, just pulling it out and looking it up, not only are we going to throw you out of the theater, but you're going to be banned permanently.
Do it like no, I'll take you one better. Do it like Inside Man, with the beginning of the movie. Before the movie starts, somebody comes in with a bag. It's like, put your phones in the bag.
Yeah,
everybody has to surrender their phones like it's a fucking bank robbery.
Wow,
actually, that's another thing. That's another idea. Have instead of a coat check, have a cell phone check. And if you and just say, if you're going to come to this theater, you are acknowledging the fact that for the period that this movie is on, your cell phone does not exist.
Hell, do it like China. As soon as you enter in, they install software on your phone. Except in this situation, it turns your phone off for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
But I had that same situation in Annihilation. The guy in front of me checked Instagram every 5 or 10 minutes, and
oh no!
If it was the guy who was directly in front of me, I would have just told him, "Put your goddamn phone away." I've done that.
I was getting
when I
ready
went to see the Jungle Book last year, or the year, was it last year or the year before?
Year before.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, year before. Whatever. Whenever that was out, there was someone who was doing that for probably the first half hour in the movie, and I walked up and said, "I didn't pay to see your cell phone, ma'am."
What did he do?
Put it away and didn't take it out for the rest of the film.
Good.
Nice.
I need to assert myself more in movies.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's just...
I'm not very confrontational, so it's hard.
I'm not a particularly confrontational person, but I just get pissed off when someone is fucking with my movie experience.
That reminds me of Batman v Superman. Is that somebody at the front of the theater had their phone out, and this was in a huge theater, like 300 seats at least, and then somebody way up at the top said, "Put your fucking phone away," and then the guy up front got up and said, "Why don't you fucking come down here and tell me that to my face?" And so during the whole scene of Lex and Lois up on the helicopter pad, these two guys are having a screaming match at opposite ends of the theater until suddenly security, the manager, and like 5 different staff members all come in and kick both of them out.
Good.
See, that's actually enhancing a movie, because that was Batman vs Superman.
In the case of BVS, that only enhanced it. Right. That's kind of funny that they had a bro off during a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah, exactly.
What you got, bro? Huh? What's your problem, bro?
Oddly enough, my biggest moment in telling someone to shut up during a movie was during a movie that I totally, like, in retrospect, I had no right telling someone to shut up during, because it was a fucking, it was Die Another Day, the Bond movie.
Oh.
Terrible fucking movie, and I don't blame anyone for being completely bored during that piece of shit. But at the time, I was younger and stupider, and I just didn't like it. I couldn't take it, and I told the person to shut the fuck up loudly. I like in the movie theater, and actually a couple people thanked me, which was nice.
Yeah,
but looking back, it was fucking Die Another Day. Why was I so angry?
I feel bad because as a teenager, I was part of groups that made noises. I didn't make the noises, but I had friends that made noises and got kicked out routinely. I was the only one that would stay behind because I was actually polite and everything. Mm-hmm. But I felt bad because I was still part of those groups, and I'm like, as a moviegoer, I should have slapped myself.
The one and only time I've ever really done that when there were people in the theater was when Zach came off the plane from Korea, and the first thing we did was we went and watched 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, why?
Because we had to review it that week.
Because freedom.
Wait, you guys? No, Felix and I reviewed 50 Shades.
I thought we had to. Well, whatever. I don't know. We had to see it either way. So, and during that movie, we just openly mocked it loudly during the entire movie, and no one said a goddamn thing, even though it was a packed theater. We also were drinking beer openly during it, and this is not a theater that sells beer.
It reminds me of the guy who brought Jaeger to fucking Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the movie.
I remember when Ken, I know we're not even talking about Hereditary, and we keep segueing and reminiscing, but Ken, you had that feature, you did a triple feature, I don't remember what it was, but you developed your own drinking game for Atlas Shrugged Part 2.
Yes, every time John Galt is referenced, drink.
Yes, and by the end of that movie, you were so fucking trash, you couldn't even message correctly. It was your written words were slurred.
That was Atlas Shrugged Part 2, because during Part 3, unfortunately, it was not a place where I felt comfortable drinking during the movie.
Yeah.
But during Part 2, yeah, I got blasted. And I was so drunk that I felt okay with watching G.I. Joe Retaliation a second time just so I could sober up.
Yeah, we were all like, please don't drive. Can you watch something else and not drive?
Yeah, no,
Can you have a? I don't know if it's a drinking problem or if it's just you just like drinking. But I think since you run Movie Boozer, it's obvious that you just like drinking. But I mean, I bring this up routinely. But the
I'll be
Oscars,
honest, I haven't had a drink like to
in a while.
excess in. I had a couple of cocktails on my birthday, but that's the first time I've drank since like last May. So
Okay. Well, I mean, I remember the Oscars podcast where you got completely drunk by the end of it and just slurring everything and sleeping and all that shit.
Yeah,
that was hilarious. That was epic.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
Hereditary. I kind of hyped this movie up greatly when I got to see it early a couple months ago.
Well, everybody did.
Everybody did, but I especially did for
it's the scariest movie you'll ever see.
I don't believe I said that because
you didn't.
I don't agree with that. But a lot of people did. Like, since The Exorcist, this generation is The Exorcist, and I'm like, well, I don't know if you could really call it that, but it's a great movie nonetheless. You could call it that, And I really was making a point not to describe the plot as much as possible. So I'm very curious to know what you guys thought. I already got some of your thoughts from the Facebook chat, but we can go a lot deeper here. So go away.
So I'll jump into it and say that I enjoyed Hereditary quite a bit. Overall, I think that this is a very successful movie and a very creepy and disturbing horror movie. I think the performances were stellar. I think the cinematography was fascinating. The filmmaking was creative. Just the sense of dread that you have throughout the whole thing it just builds and builds and builds until there's a point in the last probably 20 minutes of the movie where it suddenly turns into it takes a turn towards
Rosemary's Baby.
Well, it's what it starts doing is it starts borrowing more and more elements from a bunch of horror movies that I'm already familiar with, and it ceased to be creative and intriguing. The mystery disappeared. That was the problem. The movie had this great mystery where I was like, I didn't know where it was going. But as soon as it started to remove that element, and the mystery was gone, I was like, okay, so this is going to go the Rosemary's Baby thing, and there's going to be there's going to be this demon reborn. That's going to be the end. And guess what? That fucking happened.
Yeah.
It just felt too easy of a way to end the movie.
Maybe. The climax felt obligatory. Like either the director Ari Aster, he either didn't feel confident enough in the atmospheric movie he'd already made, or somebody told him he had to do that at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it could be either of those. Yeah, and I think
it's probably the former, but it just it crescendoed way too quickly.
Yeah, because he's a first-time director of a feature film, I think it was a very self-assured feeling movie until the end, and I think it felt like he made a concession to marketability to try to give the movie this ending that you could recognize as a conventional horror ending.
Yeah, but I would agree with that, but I would also say that on the flip side of it, it kind of is creative at the same time in how he does it. There's kind of this, I don't want to say ambiguity, but maybe removal of explanation. There is a background voice that kind of explains a little bit and says, like, you are the demon reborn or something, hail you, and all that shit.
I would say a foreground voice, but
foreground voice. Okay, that's better. Because
the demon payment.
Yeah, something like that. But it still doesn't really explain everything. It's still kind of like, letting you kind of attach things in your head.
Once you get into the demon worship thing, and you see people flying around and stuff, it removes any of the psychological elements of the film and says, oh, so all of those hallucinations were things that were happening for real. Okay.
Yes. I had that same issue. There's a lot, ambiguity, I think, is a great word. There's a whole lot of, they even mention this schizophrenia and the mental health issues the family has had, and they kind of just throw that out the window in the final act, which maybe it could still be that, but it really doesn't frame it.
Like, for example, the dead body they find in the attic, which is the grandmother. Mm-hmm. Spoilers, of course.
Right.
But they don't really know how it got there. It's implied heavily the mother did it, either, but we're not sure if she did it like coerced. We're not sure if she did it brainwashed or night sleeping, waking, being awake while, what do you call it?
Sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking, yeah.
Night sleeping?
Night sleeping.
I do that too.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever said. But you guys get what I'm saying. Like, there's this
Well, they also frame when the husband dies, the way that it's shot could go either way in terms of the supernatural book burning him or her literally setting him on fire, because she pours the turpentine on the diary and then tries to burn it. But you could just easily interpret that as she douses him in turpentine and sets him on fire.
Right, and this is just what she's interpreting.
Right, yeah, but then again, the climax is kind of was like, you know what? Never mind all that. This is a horror movie, so let's get it over with.
Well, right, and because of all that stuff, it just removed any of the psychological elements. And to me, I was liking the fact that I couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't. I mean, well, okay, we were just talking about First Reformed. That's while not a horror movie, the last probably quarter of the movie really steps outside of reality in a lot of ways, where you can't even tell if everything you're seeing is actually happening, and it never jumps out of that. And the way it ends, that ambiguous element really haunts you, because you're trying to figure it out and determine what it all means. And I like that. I like that it challenged me to comprehend it.
Right.
This removed that, and it felt it felt like Indian giving. It really did. It felt like I was getting this wonderful present of this deep and twisted movie that didn't, wasn't gonna handhold me through all the answers. And then at the end, it's like, nope, demons.
Or demon worship. Yeah, right.
I did not find the movie scary.
No, I think a lot of people will find it scary, but we were talking about this in our private chat, that our sensibilities, Hawk and myself, it kind of lends itself to more, the reaction to watching horror is more to laugh, mm-hmm. or to have joy, or be like, oh, wow, that was pretty cool, as opposed to, oh my God, I'm scared. This movie, I could see the elements being scary and everything to some people, but I was just smiling throughout.
Well, that's one thing, but everybody is saying this is the scariest movie ever made.
And right, and that undercuts it.
I would say the movie had some moments
for a review called it the scariest movie. One was like, "Well, this is the scariest movie of the year, maybe ever," and it was like, "No, it's fucking not. It's atmospheric and kind of creepy, but it's not scary." I mean, honestly, the end was frightening me more than this.
I felt shock during the movie, but fear. Admittedly, there really aren't movies that give me that feeling anymore.
The Endless creeped me out really bad, and it still kind of gives me chills. But again, that's a movie that is very speaks very much to some things that frighten me. I thought Insidious and the Conjuring films were kind of scary in the way they were presented, but I thought that the Conjuring movies they executed their scares a little more effectively. But because I think Hereditary is a family drama first and a horror film second.
Actually, you know what? You know what horror movie did give me some legitimate frights in it? And it's because this is a movie that in a lot of ways does make you wonder what is supernatural and what isn't was the Devil's Candy.
Yeah, that was good.
What was really spooky about that movie is you buy into this dude just being this psychotic, murderous maniac, and you wonder, you put yourself in the shoes of that family. What would happen if you were dealing with that shit?
Right.
And yes, there's some supernatural elements to the story, but it grounds itself just enough that I felt legitimately terrified by the situation they were going through.
Right.
So yeah, that's an example of a horror movie that works for me in terms of scares.
And again, like I say that the Hereditary is not scary. However, it does have disturbing parts. Like Charlie's death scene fucked me up.
Oh yeah,
that was gruesome. Yeah,
it was grotesque and shocking, is what it was.
I think it was shocking because we weren't expecting it. It was completely unexpected because the trailers suggest that she is the key to the movie, which she kind of is, but we expected to see her living more throughout the film, and then boom, she's dead. Like that first 20 minutes.
I loved how they did that scene too, where like you use the pole like clonk, and I'm like, oh, she bonked her head, now she's really hurt, and then you get a shot of the kid's face. I can't remember his name. Peter.
Something like that. Alex Wolff, is that his real name?
Yeah, Alex Wolff.
One thing. I'm sorry, I have to say this. One thing that kind of took me out of the movie. Alex Wolff does not seem like an actual child that either of them would have had together.
What do you mean? You just don't think like he looks like he belongs to them, like biologically?
Yeah.
No. No, not at all. Yeah, exactly.
That didn't really distract me though. What distracted me about his performance was his crying. His crying sounded stupid.
Yeah, like when they were having the seance, which was a good seance scene. She was really. Toni Collette's performance, by the way, is incredible. But when they were having the seance and they end it, and he starts crying, he's like, "Daddy,"
like he cries like a fucking 12-year-old.
Right.
And he was regressing into a childlike state. That didn't bother me.
That didn't bother me, but that is the crying level that he was doing. But yeah, he was regressing, and that I kind of liked. But I think I liked this movie so much because I had seen The Strange Thing About the Johnsons first.
Right. Which I did too.
And most recently before the film. Mm-hmm. And, knowing Ari Aster's knowing his style and his sense of humor, specifically his sense of humor, really helped me understand this movie and it helped me connect with this movie and him so much that I think anything less than outright love would have been a complete disappointment. Mm-hmm.
Right.
What I loved was in The Strange Thing, both those movies are kind of connected, not just because of, they're made by the same guy, but because they're both family dramas of complete and utter escalation. It's like a staircase going down, and each step gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's just eventually you're going to fall all the way down, And that's kind of what ends up happening. You make that one step too many that's too deep, and you can't get your balance, Mm-hmm. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. That's why I didn't mind the, and I'll admit it was a little too, I guess, wrapped up nicely, like in a bow, the ending where it's kind of like, all hail the new demon god or whatever, and I was kind of like, oh, that's where they went. Painted. Yeah, that's where they went. But at the same time, I was like, of course that's where they went. This whole movie's fucking crazy.
I wanted more of the smiling guy because that was probably the creepiest thing.
Well, who was the smiling guy? I'm trying to remember.
He was the security guard at the funeral, and then he was the guy standing in the doorway right before the action went off in the final act.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that guy was, yeah.
He was kind of scary, but they only showed him twice.
Yeah, right. But he was memorable for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we were talking about the photography a little earlier. I love those slow push-ins, those
Yeah.
slow zooms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where the camera just looks in the far distance and then focuses in on a single figure or a single item or something.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that in this movie. You know, it starts off with them going in onto a dollhouse that transitions into the real house. You know, specifically the kid's bedroom, and then later Charlie sees a figure in the far off distance beckoning her, you know, calling to her. And we see this zoom in a little bit, but it's still kind of out of focus. You can't quite tell who it is exactly. And so you kind of have to guess who it is later on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. It's just really good filmmaking, and you wouldn't really.
Well, going back to Charlie's death scene, you know, you have
Yeah.
the accident, and then you just have this shot of his face, you know, the kid's face, and he's kind of he chokes a tiny bit, and you see his eyes watering, and he, you know, then you have a perspective shot of the camera, you know, he kind of glances in the rearview mirror, then like quickly looks back onto the road, like he doesn't want to see what's behind him in the seat, and
Yeah.
that was more horrifying than anything else in the film for me because it was so very slow and effective with how they portrayed his shock and guilt, and he lets his foot off the brake and kind of drifts forward for a few feet, and then he walks home and climbs into bed. It's like you've done something really bad, and you don't want your parents to find out,
But
and
they're
they
gonna
will.
find
So you
out
kind
anyway.
of ignore the situation for a second, and then
And
you
they
hear
do
this
find out. Tony Collette, you hear her walk downstairs, you hear her open the door, close the door, and then look at the car and just let out this horrifying scream. And the camera stays focused completely on his face
Right.
as he's laying in bed.
and then it
And
cuts
honestly,
out.
how would you deal with that? Like
It was traumatic, yeah.
Yeah.
the fact
was,
that you
yeah,
were basically responsible for killing your
your
sister.
sibling, yeah,
Right.
right. Those were the moments of the movie that really got me, were the parental moments where the parents are treating him after the after Charlie's death.
Mhm.
You know, like specifically Tony Collette. You know, she's like, "I'm your mother." You know, that whole dinner sequence that was just so fraught with tension, and the
Yes.
dad's trying to keep it all together. Like he's kind of removed from it, but he's also trying to, you know, keep that little thread of family together. And then later, she has a nightmare or a sleepwalking incident where she kind of lets out to her son, like, "I didn't want to have you."
Yeah.
And she covers her mouth like, "Holy shit, did I just say that to my kid?"
Yeah.
You know? Well, I tried smoking and drinking and, you know, partying and stuff, you know, to see if that would do it. I was like, holy shit, you don't tell your fucking kid that.
Everybody in this movie is an absolute coward,
Yes.
except for Charlie. I would argue
Yeah.
that Charlie is a
No,
little more direct or
she's a
whatever.
little weirder. Yes, but she's a free spirit.
She's also a demon, so you know.
And well, she's a host. She's a host for a demon. Yes.
Yeah.
What I like is how the demon worshiping group, they lose Charlie, so that wasn't part of their plan. So they just had to improvise and settle on the brother.
Did you notice that it was well, you know what? I think they did intend on losing Charlie because I think they put that deer in the road.
Really?
I think so. Because at the end they say, "Oh, you've escaped your inferior female body and given you a strong male one." Like their end game was to give Heyman a male host.
Right.
I didn't recall that.
Well,
maybe I was just too
that was
shocked by what I was seeing. I don't know.
So
when
because
when she was looking when Tony Collette was looking at the Heyman thing in the book, it even said that he prefers male hosts.
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
and then of course saying
yeah.
that how her mother really wanted to be a part of Peter's life, whatever the kid's name is, and the mom wouldn't let him, and so but then after Charlie's born, she's like, "Okay, I'll let you into my life again." So she took she kind of just was like, "All right, well, I'll take what I can get, but we're gonna get this demon to that fucking guy," you know.
And then
so I think that they orchestrated Charlie's death to release the demon into the
him.
boy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I can see that happening. I thought it was really unsettling about the grandma, how she would breastfeed Charlie
Yeah, that was
in
weird.
the stories. That I was like, oh God.
I was like, wow,
I was like,
that's what you
grandmas are
really meant when
cool,
you
but
said feed him.
I was like, grandmas are great, but that's going a little too far, man. I mean,
Yeah.
now I've heard of stories of Salma Hayek offering to breastfeed children in Africa and other countries for mothers that can't, produce or whatever.
That is a total
That's
Selma Hayek thing to do.
that's fine in sort of. It's a little weird, but it's also okay because it's just
It's
milk, really.
and it's also
But
Selma Hayek, so yes, you can
so
go
hell
ahead.
yes, go ahead. Yeah, I'm not trying to suggest that male adults should go be lining up to breastfeed from Selma Hayek.
Well,
Like,
no. I'm not saying that. I'm saying she's offering, and
she's offering, right? And
it doesn't matter that it's a child. That's that's Selma Hayek offering. So it's like, yeah,
and
go ahead.
the baby's not gonna know the difference really. But if you were to tell me later on in life that my grandmother breastfed me for a little bit, I would probably be creeped out.
Right.
Incredible.
Just a little, yes. But if Selma Hayek, if you told me, oh, this one time I was sick and Selma Hayek came by to the hospital and breastfed you, I'd probably be like, really? That's pretty cool.
More.
Where are the pictures of that?
Yeah.
Where's the Instagram video?
This is for me.
So, Hereditary. Great movie in my opinion. Maybe the ending could have been a little different. It seems like it probably should have been less one thing and more of another thing,
or less of any one specific thing and more of not any specific one thing.
Yeah, just more ambiguity, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess
it's well done. The music is good. It's beautifully shot. Well acted.
Ari Aster knows what he's doing very well for the most part.
As much as I have a problem with that final act of the movie, I'm even willing to say that it's a great movie. It's just a flawed great movie.
Yeah, I think it's a great movie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to his next stuff. I would have looked forward to something else if he didn't do Hereditary, just because I love Strange Thing About the Johnsons so much. Mm-hmm. And that's beyond it being a messed up story. You know what I mean? Like, I love the filmmaking of that short film. I was really impressed by it. Same thing with Hereditary, and I was very thankful that I got a chance to actually tell him in person that I love this movie. Right before he did a Q&A, I was leaving and I was like, hey, I really loved your movie, man. Great job. And he was like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
And
it's like, that made me feel good.
And I'm strongly looking forward to his next project, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I wish this hype train would end with it being the scariest movie ever. Like, nearly every single review has said it's the scariest movie of all time, and people need to get up out of their own ass about this movie. Like, none of them, I don't want to say that. I can almost guarantee you that very few of them actually believe that. They just want to say that because everybody else is saying it. This is a total hype train.
It gets clicks.
Yeah, this movie's spooky wooky.
Exactly.
It's they should make a Star Wars horror film and call it Spooky Wookie.
That'll be a Disney Channel Halloween special eventually.
That's what it would be. They got Chewbacca in there, and he's like, "We have to catch the guy in the costume." And it's like Scooby Doo or something, but it's with Chewbacca.
It's like Chewbacca wearing a mask strapped to his face. It's like clearly too small for him. They're like, "Wow, who's under the mask?"
It's all his hair.
Like a Freddy mask that takes up like a third of his face.
Right. Scooby Doo meets Spooky Wookie and the Junkyard Gang.
Yeah. Spooky Wookie. That's a classic line. We're gonna bring that up in other episodes of this podcast. Spooky Wookie.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll reconvene next week with
Incredibles 2.
Incredibles 2 and Superfly.
Wow.
I'm reviewing Superfly, so.
Okay, well maybe it'll be okay. I don't know.
No, it's going to be stupid.
Okay, in the sense that it's stupid is what I mean.
I am excited to see how stupid that movie. It's directed by Director X for starters.
Who is Director X?
He makes music videos.
Oh, really? Okay.
Kanye West and Jay-Z and shit like that.
Uh-huh.
It's written by Alex Say, who did he did Watchmen, which is good. He did a bunch of other like silly movies, and it's produced by Joel Silver.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.